important for us, I think, all as South Africans, especially where we are now, where, economically there is just so much constraint, but yet you are bringing solutions. And so we are so honored to be able to have this conversation and to help many other people that may not know about the information that you're going to share. So I'm going to start off by asking you, what is the gap market in South Africa's housing sector? And why has it been so difficult for people in this particular group to access home ownership until now? I would just like to even put in my own story. I mean, my mom worked as a domestic worker, and she never actually owned a home of her own, because of that exact thing, the gap problem, where she couldn't afford to buy a home via the bank or via bank financing. So eventually, my siblings and I, and together with her, we built a house in the Eastern Cape. But I don't think that is a place that she wanted to go to, but there was nothing for her in the city of Cape Town. She was in the waiting list since 1992. And that is not a word of a lie. She's been on the waiting list since 1992. So coming back to the gap, Mr. Meyer, why is there this gap?
Well, before we start this, we helped a lady called Mary at the age of 58 to actually own her own house, and she's a domestic worker. And luckily, her employer realized that you gotta also, like we always say, think like a bank. So a bank thinks about you when you apply for a home loan. What is your income? What is your credit score? And then there's a fantastic subsidy that used to be called FLISP. It's now called First Home Finance. I'm going to touch on that as well, because this subsidy enabled Mary at the age of 58 to own her own house. But you started there also very well with a question and a comment about on a waiting list. And this is where the gap market really kicks in, because you'll find that a lot of people are sitting on a waiting list for many, many, many years, and they are waiting for a free house. We even had one gentleman in Cape Town that resigned from his job, earning 14,000 Rand a month, and moving back to Kimberley, living in a shack. And we phoned him 2 months later, and I said, "Why are you living in Kimberley?"
Sure.
He says, "No, I gave up my job because I'm waiting now in Kimberley for a free house." And it's most likely that he'll wait on that waiting list for 10, 15 years and never get a free house. So coming back to the first market is the RDP houses, or we used to call it Hophuise. And that's when a person earns under 3,500 Rand. And then you get on the waiting list and hope the government will one day be able to give you a house. And we've learned that the government is trying to avoid and trying to stop giving out free houses because it's very expensive. Then we move into the gap market. And this is a gap, almost what they say, the gap is you fall in between that you can't get a free house, but you don't earn enough money to actually buy a house. The banks are looking, the financial institutions are looking at the income range from 3,501 Rand up to 34,000 Rand. If you look at the government that's providing a subsidy called First Home Finance, their gap market is from 3,501 Rand up to 22,000 Rand. So already there's also already a huge gap between the government's ceiling of 22,000 Rand, and then there's that missing link there as well for the next 12,000 Rand to what the banks are regarding as the affordable market. But then we also have what I call the gap within the gap market, and this is where you earn actually under 12 or 15,000 Rand, and then the banks are very reluctant to give a person in that income range a home loan. So you find that banks are favoring people that earn from 15,000 to 22,000 Rand and more to give them a home loan. But for luckily, and this is where the government actually stepped in, and they saw that people are struggling to get home loans, and they de-linked the subsidy that used to be called FLISP, now First Home Finance. They de-linked this subsidy from only home loans in 1st of April 2022. So all of a sudden now you can use a own savings, you can use pension fund money, you can use a private loan, a corporate loan like from African Bank or Capitec Bank or something like that, unsecured loan. You can even use stokvel money. And for me, the beautiful part is that we developed the rent to buy concept. You can
Nice.
even use a rent to buy structure to trigger this subsidy. So all of a sudden, this subsidy lies there open for people to apply. And maybe in your mother's case, you may have built the house on a permission to occupy land, PTO, and this also triggers now a subsidy. So all of a sudden, there's lots of subsidies available, and particularly in the gap market. And that's why we want to help the people that can't afford a house, that never thought about owning a house. They think owning a house is only for the rich and famous, and we want to demystify that concept to say, if you want to own your house, we want to help you to own that house. And that's what led to this Cloetesville initiative as well.
And I think, you know what, as you're speaking now, what comes to mind is that home ownership is really about dignity and stability, you know. And can you maybe expand on why it matters so much, especially in the history of our communities in South Africa and in communities like Cloetesville?
Well, we've seen it all over because we've done projects in the likes of Malmesbury, Darling, um, um, Mossel Bay. We've done in Bredasdorp as well. And particularly in Bredasdorp, we now went to one of the ladies. She was 4 years old, and she moved into her own house for a rent-to-buy structure. And I went to them 6 months later, and the people were so proud of their houses. They were smiling all over, and they said to me, Mr. Meyer, this is the first time in 54 years that I celebrated Christmas in my own house. I went to
Wow.
another family. There was a single mother living there with her 3 children, and they were so cozy, huddled up in their own house. They were just spending fantastic family time. And I said, what made this special for you? And she said, the first time ever in my life, I've got a safe house, I've got a dry house, it doesn't leak in winter, and I've got really, it's my family home. We say people become house proud. You know that even if it's the smallest type of house, they still feel this is my own property. And I can look after my property, and I've got my children are safe. For us, that really ignites me to actually see that I want to help more people. And particularly in Cloetesville, we were appointed by the Stellenbosch municipality to conduct a survey, and we had 5 months to do the survey. We went into community, we dealt with, we met with the councillors there in the area. We went to check in the backyards where people were living in horrible conditions. We were even in a shack that was about 45 degrees, standing at an angle, and it actually caught fire a few weeks later. But we realized we really go deep into the community. We're busy with projects now in Gugulethu as well. And I've been invited by the Minister of Housing in the Western Cape to participate in Beaufort West workshops, and also Hanover Park. We've got another one coming up on the 13th of this month. So we really roll up our sleeves. We go and talk to everybody in the community. We find out, do you want to own your house? Everybody puts up their hand. Then we say, but why don't you own a house now? And then we start digging into why not. And quite often it's because people, luckily your mother has family that can support her. But people say that, I don't know how to do that. I don't have a deposit. I mean, we say, what about this magic about the first home finance subsidy? Then the biggest issue that we find, particularly in Cloetesville, where people have got bad credit scores. And it's not because they are bad people, it's just that the society and the banking and the lending are there out today to give you credit. And the moment that you can't pay, they put you on a blacklist. And then when you're blacklisted, you are prevented from getting access to property finance. Nobody wants to give you a loan to buy a property, because we've had so many cases where people were retrenched. We had COVID issues. There's a lot of stuff there, but if people can't get out of that credit score trap, then they stay paying rental forever. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Get out of a rental trap, because you are paying off the home loan of your landlord. You could have been paying off your own home loan.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Meyer, do you believe that the Cloetesville model can be replicated in other municipalities across South Africa, not just in the Western Cape? And what needs to happen for that to become a reality?
We realized about 5-6 years ago that you can't just give a person a house or say apply for a property because they don't understand how it works. So on our own time, our own money, we started doing workshops. We did in Kailicha, we did in Gauteng, we did all these small towns and bigger cities. We did in Hangberg, in Hout Bay, requested by the city of Cape Town, all on our own time, our own money. So we've invested quite a lot of time and money on ourselves because we believe that the only way to help people to actually understand the concept of owning their houses is to provide workshops, information sessions, and assisting people to get out of those debt traps applying for subsidies. So we're very fortunate that at the one conference, and I'm actually sitting right now at a conference in the Western Cape of the Western Cape Property Development Forum, is that one lady came to me working from the municipality of Stellenbosch and said, I really like what you do and what you were telling. I was one of the conference speakers. Can't you come and meet with the Stellenbosch municipality? And when we started engaging, we realized that they are actually looking what we've been doing on our own time, our own money for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And that led them to actually prepare a tender document. So we had to go through a tender document that thick and compete with other people that can also provide the service. But I think that I know that we have a real turnkey program where we engage with the community, we interview them, we set up a website, and we understand and speak to everybody. We understand what are their problems, and we submitted a 55-page report yesterday to the Stellenbosch municipality to indicate to them the actual problems in the area, why people can't afford to buy property, because they were looking, and other municipalities were looking to build houses of about 750,000 rand. And you realize that the buying power is around about 400,000 rand. But the biggest problem could be get people out of debt. Yesterday, one of my colleagues engaged with a huge group where they support farm workers, and this group will actually allow a 20,000 rand subsidy for their farm workers to actually renegotiate their debt. Because you can't renegotiate and get out of your debt trap. Your hands are tied to apply for a home loan. So yes, we really believe and understand that this is the way going forward to other municipalities, the other government institutions, private property developers, all to look at this model and say, wow, maybe let's start there. Let's start engaging with everybody, understand the market, and let's also provide the support, because we don't only stop with this. We actually are launching next week the Cloetesville 1,000 home ownership program. And this is also, we want to get the champion of homeowners in Cloetesville. We say there are 1,000 people on that waiting list or on our list that signed up with us, actually 1,005 people. And we want to see in 1 year from now, how many of them are actually owning their own properties. And then we want to actually put that in a second report, because you can, one thing is nice to actually just do the report and the investigation, but the other one is actually to provide at the end of the day real turnaround for people that can actually own and live in their own homes.
I love that. It's practical steps. And I think one thing that I want is just that practical step that one needs to take right now. If there's someone's listening and maybe they are not based in those communities that you mentioned, what must one do? I'm even thinking of myself as an example. Right now, I also want home ownership. So what are the practical steps? And I fall in the gap market. What must I do in order for me to own a house? Where do I go? Which list must my name be on? Who do I talk to?
What I would invite your Cape Pulpit actually maybe to set up a webinar where you can invite a lot of people to the webinar, and we can host it at different times. We can make it a live session, and then we can actually get people to ask questions. We can explain how it works, because we really felt what we found in Cloetesville is that we did a lot of workshops on one-to-one basis, but then we also did online webinars and seminars and all that stuff. And we really had an amazing turnaround. And then people were actually engaging through that. So number one, I invite, and it would be lovely to do a workshop and webinars with yourselves. But in the meantime, they can send an email to me at Meyer at mdwinc.co.za. Or I'll give you my cell phone and WhatsApp number. It's 083-653-6975. The alternative, they can also visit our website for Meyer de Waal Attorneys, mdwinc.co.za, Meyer de Waal, or they can just Google Meyer de Waal and you'll get out to maybe a lot of articles and publications we've done, but really get in touch with us today. Unfortunately, I'm attending a property conference, and we're discussing actually right today is the
Amazing.
discussion about how do you actually get access to property finance where the banks are
Mm,
not lending money. And these are all the topical questions. That's why we try to be on the front end of inventing and listening and learning and getting all the stuff together. So would love to do workshops with yourselves, putting up seminars, webinars, because I feel really through your the Cape Pulpit, we can really reach a huge amount of your listeners and followers. And maybe we can also have a Cape Pulpit 1000 home ownership program. That
I
would be
love
fantastic.
it. Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can say how many of you own now and how many want to own, and then a year from now we see how many people own their own properties. And you can just imagine for me, the joy is to help a person to move into their own house. And I think from your
Indeed.
side, one can do that as well.
Wow, thank you so much for this game changing initiative, and for you to, like you explained before, using your own finances and so on and so forth to do this. This is indeed the hearts of South Africans that we need, people that are going to use what they know to make a significant change in people's lives. And I believe that home ownership is one of those major, major things that need to begin to change, and the narrative around it needs to change. And that is indeed what you are doing, Mr. Meyer de Waal. Thank you so, so much for your kindness and your willingness, and for changing lives, one by one. That definitely comes to mind, that you are changing lives. So thank you so much. And we wish you nothing but, God's grace and blessings as you go about doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And blessings to you. Bye-bye.